might be a small island, but we've got a big history that's still full of mysteries. So every year, hundreds of archaeologists go out hunting for clues to our forgotten past.
Oh, that is stunningly beautiful.
The discovery in Janakala, in the wild northern wilderness of Finland, far beyond the familiar rhythms of modern life, the Earth kept a secret for centuries. Here, in the unbroken stretches of pine forests and rolling hills, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of moss, snow, and ancient memory. This remote landscape, stretching nearly 100 kilometers north of Helsinki, was largely untouched, a quiet expanse where time seemed to slow and nature claimed dominion over all human presence. It was in this solitude, amidst the endless horizon of forest and sky, that a discovery would unfold, one that would captivate the world of archaeology and challenge everything previously known about Finland's medieval past. The story began with chance, the kind of serendipity that historians and archaeologists live for but seldom encounter. In 2013, a local metal detectorist, quietly scanning a windswept field in Janakala, was about to touch history. Metal detecting in these parts was more than a hobby. It was a small act of patience, a way to engage with the past in the most tactile sense. Yet on this day, the routine of sweeping coils across the soil revealed something extraordinary. Beneath the thin, frost-hardened layer of topsoil, there was a signal unlike the mundane echoes of lost nails or farm tools. There was something else, something that would change the understanding of medieval life in this northern wilderness. The soil in Janakala was acidic and unforgiving, a condition that often erased the past rather than preserving it. Organic material, delicate bone, and even most wood could not survive the centuries here, leaving the landscape almost devoid of evidence of those who had once lived, worked, and died in its depths. Yet despite the inhospitable conditions, the metal detectorist uncovered a grave, a medieval skeleton lying in solitude, far from any known cemetery or sacred burial ground. Its location alone was unusual, defying expectations of where the dead were laid to rest in this part of the world. But the grave held a secret far more remarkable than its isolation. The skeleton was accompanied by two swords, placed with deliberate care, separated not only by position, but by centuries of history. One sword was medieval, roughly contemporary with the skeleton itself, a blade forged and wielded in a period that had seen both the spread of Christianity and the waning of older pagan traditions. The other sword was from an earlier age, a Viking-era weapon. Its steel, at least 2 centuries older than the medieval blade, it lay beside. The coexistence of these two swords within a single grave was unprecedented, not just in Finland, but across Europe. Archaeologists had never encountered such a juxtaposition, a direct link between the martial traditions of the Viking Age and the medieval period, preserved in a single human resting place. This was not merely a grave, it was a temporal bridge, a tangible manifestation of the layers of history that had unfolded in this northern frontier. The find drew immediate attention from experts far beyond Finland's borders. Among those who arrived was Tim Sutherland, one of Britain's most accomplished archaeologists, renowned for his work on medieval skeletal remains. His career had been devoted to peeling back the layers of history to understand the lives of the medieval dead, to see through their eyes and grasp the contours of a lifelong past. For Tim, the Janakala grave was more than a discovery. It was a portal. Here lay a man who had lived, fought, and been deliberately memorialized across centuries, whose story had survived only in fragments of bone and metal. The challenge was to reconstruct not only his life, but also the cultural and historical context that had brought these two swords together in one resting place. Leading the excavation on site was Simo Vanhatalo, a Finnish archaeologist with decades of experience and more than 500 excavations to his name. Simo's reputation as a meticulous and patient investigator was well earned, and the Janakala site demanded nothing less. The metal detectorist's initial discovery, combined with preliminary geophysical surveys, allowed Simo to plan a careful excavation. But even with meticulous preparation, the conditions were challenging. The skeleton was fragile, degraded by centuries of acidic soil. Every movement risked breaking bones or dislodging artifacts that held critical clues to understanding the past. The team worked slowly, methodically, their trowels and brushes uncovering not just a skeleton, but a story that had lain dormant for 7 centuries. The first sword to emerge, uncovered by the detectorist, initially suggested a Viking burial. Its form, weight, and the traces of craftsmanship seemed to place it in the era of the northern raiders and traders, the men whose exploits had stretched from Scandinavia to the British Isles, from the coasts of Russia to the rivers of France. Yet when the second sword, a medieval blade, was revealed beneath it, the narrative became far more complex. Carbon dating confirmed that the skeleton itself belonged to the medieval period, while the older sword bore a distinct fire patina, indicating that it had been cremated or otherwise exposed to intense heat centuries before. Additional fragments of burnt human bones suggested that this grave had incorporated remnants of an earlier burial, a ritualistic act that linked 2 eras, 2 warriors in a single resting place. 2 swords, 2 warriors, 1 grave. The Yanakala burial had transformed into a puzzle that would challenge archaeologists' understanding of medieval northern Europe. As news of the discovery spread, the site drew attention not only from archaeologists, but also from specialists in historical weaponry. Among them was Paul MacDonald, a sword expert and master craftsman whose lifework had revolved around understanding the form, function, and history of blades. For Paul, swords were not merely objects of metal, they were tools, symbols, and extensions of the men who wielded them. The Viking sword, elegantly tempered and surprisingly light, revealed the skill of a craftsman who valued precision, speed, and balance. Every curve, every taper in the blade suggested it had been designed to move swiftly through the air, to respond instantly to the skill and reflexes of its user. In contrast, the medieval sword was a weapon of cavalry, long, heavy, and designed for powerful strikes from horseback, its very weight and length a testament to the martial strategies of its time. The presence of both swords together raised profound questions. Why had a medieval man been buried alongside a weapon centuries older than his own life? Had it belonged to an ancestor, passed down as a family heirloom? Or had it been ritually included to symbolize continuity and respect for the past? The site became a confluence of archaeology, history, and anthropology, inviting speculation and rigorous scientific investigation alike. The careful placement of the blades suggested intention, purpose, and meaning, a deliberate act meant to preserve a connection across generations, a bridge between Viking paganism and medieval Christianity. The excavation itself was painstaking. The team had to navigate the fragility of the remains, ensuring that every brushstroke preserved evidence of the past. Soil samples were taken, radiocarbon dating conducted, and detailed records made of the position of each artifact. The skeletal remains revealed not only age and sex, but also hints of the man's life, his diet, his health, and perhaps even the nature of his death. Each detail added layers of understanding to a story that had remained buried for centuries. Simo Vanatalo's expertise was critical. His decades of experience allowed him to interpret the nuances of the soil, the placement of artifacts, and the subtleties of the skeleton itself. He recognized that the inclusion of the older sword was not an accident. It was symbolic, deliberate, and perhaps deeply personal. Such acts of burial ritual speak to the interplay of culture, memory, and identity, where objects are imbued with meaning far beyond their practical utility. Here, in Yanakala, history had been inscribed not in books, but in the ground, preserved in metal and bone, waiting for those patient enough to uncover it. Paul MacDonald's analysis brought the swords to life in a new way. Studying the Viking blade, he noted its lightness, balance, and swift responsiveness, attributes that made it ideal for a swordsman trained in precise strikes and rapid movements. The medieval sword, in contrast, demanded brute force, its long reach and weight optimized for cutting through enemy lines from horseback. These were not decorative weapons, they were instruments of survival, crafted to serve men whose lives depended on their effectiveness in combat. Each sword, in its own way, told the story of a warrior, his skills, his environment, and the cultural context in which he lived. The juxtaposition of swords also highlighted the intersection of cultural traditions in medieval Finland. The Viking era represented a time of pagan beliefs, raiding, and expansion, while the medieval period marked the rise of Christian influence and evolving social hierarchies. The Janakalä grave was a testament to this transition, capturing a moment when older traditions were remembered, honored, and incorporated into the new social and religious framework. The man buried here was both a product of his time and a custodian of the past, a figure who straddled two worlds, connected across centuries by the steel of his swords. The discovery of the Janakalä grave was not just an archaeological event, it was a narrative waiting to be told. It spoke of the lives of men long gone, their skill, their beliefs, and their desire to leave a mark on the world. It revealed the technical sophistication of Viking and medieval metalworking, the strategic thinking behind cavalry combat, and the symbolic power of burial rituals. Each detail, from the fire patina on the older sword to the careful placement of artifacts, added depth and texture to the story, transforming a simple field in northern Finland into a stage upon which centuries of human history played out. As the excavation continued, it became clear that Janakalä was more than an isolated grave. Geophysical surveys revealed further anomalies, suggesting that this field could hold additional secrets, perhaps more graves, more swords, more stories waiting to be uncovered. For Tim Sutherland, Simo Vanatalo, and Paul MacDonald, the discovery was both an end and a beginning, an end to centuries of silence and a beginning of inquiry, research, and reflection on the complex interplay of history, culture, and human life in medieval Finland. The man of Janakalä, buried with swords from two distinct eras, had transcended time. Through careful excavation, analysis, and reconstruction, his story emerged, not fully, but in fragments vivid enough to convey the essence of a life shaped by war, tradition, and belief. The swords were his voice across the centuries, speaking of skill, identity, and the enduring connection between past and present. In the wild northern wilderness, the earth had kept its secret, and now, finally, it had been revealed. In the end, the grave at Janakalä was more than a discovery. It was a bridge across time, connecting Viking and medieval Finland, paganism and Christianity, past and present. It reminded those who uncovered it that history is not just recorded in chronicles or inscriptions, but lives on in the earth, in objects, and in the lives of those who came before. The swords, the skeleton, and the soil of Janakalä were not just artifacts, they were storytellers, preserving a man's life, a people's culture, and a world long vanished yet still tangible to those willing to look deeply enough. Surveying the site and reconstructing the blades. In the crisp northern air of Finland, the Janakalä field seemed, at first glance, like any other stretch of pine-covered wilderness, but beneath the sodden moss and scattered stones lay secrets that had lain undisturbed for centuries, waiting for discovery. The 2013 grave, an unprecedented medieval burial with Viking-era connections, had already rewritten assumptions about the region's past. Now, Tim Sutherland and Rachel Wood from the University of York returned to the site with a renewed purpose: to uncover whether the enigmatic grave was a solitary anomaly or part of a more extensive and organized burial landscape. Surveying in Finland was no simple task. The magnetic granite soil, rich with iron minerals, produced constant interference, confounding sensitive instruments and threatening to mask delicate archaeological signals. Traditional excavation methods could only go so far, and any disturbance risked destroying centuries-old remains. Tim and Rachel therefore relied on geophysical surveying techniques, particularly magnetometry, to map the invisible traces of the past beneath the earth. A magnetometer, carried carefully across the field in a grid-like pattern, measured subtle variations in the Earth's magnetic field, revealing shapes, outlines, and structures that were invisible to the naked eye. Day after day, the two moved methodically across the field, eyes scanning the instruments, while ears tuned to the soft hum of technology against the quiet of the forest. Slowly, patterns began to emerge from the haze of magnetic interference. Linear features stretched across the landscape, faint but persistent, hinting at ditches or boundaries. Circular enclosures appeared where none had been expected, suggesting spaces deliberately set aside for some purpose long forgotten. The anomalies matched nothing in the surrounding wilderness, yet they aligned intriguingly with a map from 1692, a centuries-old survey of the region. Though the map was rough and schematic, its recorded paths, enclosures, and landmarks corresponded with the magnetic readings. It was as if the landscape itself had preserved a memory, surviving fire, frost, and human neglect to whisper its secrets to those patient enough to listen. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Edinburgh, Paul MacDonald began a project that was equally painstaking, but of a different nature. The swords from the 2013 grave had arrived for detailed study, and Paul's mission was to reconstruct them. This was no mere exercise in replication. It was an effort to understand the warriors behind the steel, the lives lived in a world of violence, honor, and skill. Each blade was examined, measured, and documented to the millimeter. The Viking sword, delicate yet precise, demanded a balance that spoke to the agility of its original wielder. The medieval sword, larger and heavier, needed careful tempering to replicate the devastating impact it would have delivered from horseback. Paul's workshop was filled with the smell of heated metal and the rhythmic clang of hammers striking anvils. Every angle of the swords was studied, the distal taper, which influenced speed and penetration, the fuller, which lightened the blade without sacrificing strength, the pommel and grip, each revealing ergonomic considerations that reflected the warrior's hand, stance, and tactical approach. The medieval sword, in particular, was unlike any Paul had encountered. Its single-handed grip extended further than usual, its length designed to maximize reach and leverage in mounted combat. It was a weapon that demanded strength, skill, and strategy, a unique instrument perfectly suited to its user. Through the painstaking process of replication, Paul began to see more than form and function. He began to understand the identity of the warriors themselves. A sword is more than metal. It is an extension of the body, a reflection of personality, training, and even social status. The Viking sword was crafted for speed and adaptability, light in hand and responsive to rapid maneuvers. Its edges could slice with precision, its balance allowing a skilled swordsman to fight with both agility and foresight. The medieval sword, in contrast, was a tool of raw power. Heavy and imposing, it demanded forceful swings and rapid downward strikes, capable of cleaving through armor and bone alike. These were living weapons, tested in combat, honed by experience, and intimately connected to the humans who wielded them. Back in Finland, Tim and Rachel's survey was revealing ever more layers of mystery. Metal detectorists had returned with advanced pulse induction meters, instruments capable of detecting deeply buried metals through layers of soil and stone. Their work uncovered anomalies scattered across the field, linear, circular, and amorphous shapes that hinted at something larger than a single grave. Some anomalies were small, likely personal items or small deposits of metal, while others were more massive, potentially graves, swords, or ritualistic deposits. Each signal carried the potential to rewrite the understanding of Janakala's past. Could this field be a burial ground spanning centuries? A resting place for warriors, perhaps, where the dead had been memorialized in patterns and practices that reflected a long-standing tradition. The possibility electrified the archaeological team. Every anomaly became a thread connecting the present to a lost medieval world. offering hints of human activity, social hierarchy, and martial culture. The 2013 grave had provided a tantalizing glimpse into the interplay of Viking and medieval influences. But these new anomalies suggested that what had been found was only the tip of the iceberg. Perhaps this was a site where history itself had been deliberately layered. Viking relics preserved within medieval burials, sacred spaces reused and reinterpreted over generations, are palimpsest of human memory written in soil, metal, and bone. Tim and Rachel combined their geophysical data with historical research, overlaying their findings on maps and analyzing soil chemistry to better understand the extent of human activity. The linear features could indicate pathways, defensive ditches, or boundary markers, while circular enclosures might represent ritual spaces, family plots, or meeting areas for ceremonial purposes. Deep soil analysis revealed traces of organic matter and mineral concentrations suggesting repeated human presence, hearths, offerings, and possibly remnants of wooden structures. Finland, which had once been seen as a peripheral region in medieval studies, was beginning to reveal itself as a place of complex social and ritualistic practices, a landscape where beliefs, power, and memory converged. Meanwhile, Paul MacDonald's reconstructions provided critical insight into the cultural and tactical priorities of the warriors themselves. The differences between the Viking and medieval swords were more than chronological. They represented a shift in approach, philosophy, and societal structure. The Viking sword's design emphasized agility, reflex, and personal skill, a weapon suited to raiders, scouts, and skirmishers who valued precision and rapidity. The medieval sword was about authority, dominance, and shock tactics. Mounted combat required a weapon capable of delivering maximum impact with minimal preparation, a blade that embodied the raw power and control of the cavalry. Together, these swords illustrated a continuum of martial evolution, a conversation across centuries between warriors separated by time, yet connected by legacy. The Jänekälä field, with its newly revealed anomalies, presented a perfect convergence of archaeology and technology. Geophysical surveys, historical maps, metal detection, and experimental archaeology worked in concert to illuminate the past. Each piece of evidence reinforced the idea that human activity at Jänekälä had been continuous, layered, and deliberate. The 2013 grave, with its combination of Viking and medieval artifacts, was not an outlier, but a node within a larger network of sites, a story in which each burial, weapon, and artifact contributed to the broader narrative of northern Finland's history. The team's work also underscored the interplay of ritual, memory, and identity in medieval societies. The deliberate inclusion of an older, cremated sword in a medieval grave was not mere ornamentation, it was a symbolic act. Such a practice suggested reverence for the past, the honoring of ancestors, or perhaps a claim of continuity and legitimacy. It hinted at a worldview in which the dead were guardians, intermediaries, or symbols of enduring power. By examining the swords, the skeletal remains, and the layout of the surrounding features, the researchers could reconstruct not only individual lives, but also social structures, belief systems, and the ways communities engaged with the concepts of death, memory, and lineage. The Jänekälä survey also illuminated broader questions about cultural exchange, migration, and adaptation in Northern Europe. Finland, often considered peripheral to the grand narratives of Viking and medieval history, revealed itself as a dynamic space where influences intersected, overlapped, and transformed. The region's warriors were not isolated. They were participants in a wider network of trade, warfare, and cultural transmission. The swords were tangible evidence of this connectivity, representing both local craftsmanship and broader stylistic trends, bridging centuries of technological development and martial practice. As weeks turned into months, the team's work produced a clearer picture of the Jänekälä landscape. The anomalies were catalogued, prioritized for excavation, and interpreted in the context of both contemporary and historical knowledge. Each discovery each metal fragment and each soil sample contributed to an increasingly complex and compelling narrative. The field was no longer just a remote clearing in the Finnish wilderness. It was a chronicle etched in earth and steel that told of life, death, and memory over centuries. In tandem with the fieldwork, Paul MacDonald's sword reconstructions continue to provide vital context by wielding the replicated blades, testing their balance, cutting ability, and response. He could infer the combat styles and physical conditioning of their original owners. These were weapons that demanded not only technical skill, but also strategic thinking. They were embedded with the experiences, decisions, and intentions of the men who had wielded them. Each swing, each block, each maneuver, in Paul's experimental archaeology sessions echoed faintly across time, offering a rare and intimate connection to the people who had shaped and been shaped by the Janakala field. The integration of technology, historical research, and hands-on experimental archaeology created a multi-dimensional understanding of Janakala. The field became a laboratory for exploring the interaction of human behavior, martial technology, and ritual practice. It revealed the layering of human experience across centuries, demonstrating how memory and tradition were physically inscribed into the landscape. The 2013 grave, once an isolated curiosity, became a lens through which the entire region's history could be examined, from Viking raiders to medieval knights, from pagan rites to Christian customs. Ultimately, the work at Janakala underscored the profound complexity of historical interpretation. Each artifact, anomaly, and skeletal remain was a piece of a vast puzzle, yet no single piece could tell the entire story.